Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 340. We're doing our week 4 NFL picks against the spread for the 2021 NFL season. Joined once again by Jacob Kamiker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you and how's your week 3?
I'm doing great. My week 3 was very good. It was a nice bounce back after going 6-10 the first 2 weeks of the season. I flipped it around, went 10-6 overall, so I can't really complain. Couple I got wrong, that I feel like I should have gotten right in retrospect. The one that's nagging at me is the Buccaneers-Rams game. We both when we last talked last week, we were both on the Buccaneers. We thought Brady might have a chance to win that one. I didn't end up betting it, but the Rams ended up beating them pretty soundly as underdogs. So I feel like I should have seen that one coming a little more because the Rams have played well. And, the Buccaneers were getting ready for that trip to Gillette Stadium. And I know that only really impacts Tom Brady, but feel like I should have known there would be maybe a little bit of something in the back of his mind there. So try to do a little better this week, but I'll take a 10-6 week any week.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I was happy to get the September pick of the month correct with the Dolphins, although it looked for a while that the Dolphins are going to allow that touchdown in overtime. Like Peyton Barber looked like Jim Brown in overtime, like the way he was running the ball, and it seemed like they could have scored a touchdown easily. Thankfully, they kicked the field goal, so we got that pick correct. Overall, kind of like a mediocre week. We talked about the 49ers-Packers game before we started recording this. And it was so frustrating to see the 49er cornerbacks go down, especially after one of them came back before the game. And that's kind of like why I like the 49ers. And then 2 of them got hurt. So that was frustrating. And the Chiefs just laying an egg. I know we disagreed on this game. I like the Chiefs. You like the Chargers. The Chiefs, the first 3 drives went to the Chargers 30-yard line, and they had turnovers on the first 3 drives. Like, I don't think Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce, as long as they're together, I don't think they're ever going to do that again. Like, so it was just like a very fluky game. So I was upset about that. But overall, it's just, I was happy to get the Dolphins pick correct.
Yeah, we were on the opposite sides of that, but that game, that was close. Like, if they didn't have as many turnovers, that result is a lot different. So I got a little lucky there, but I won't complain. I was due a little bit of good luck after the early start to the season, but wish it had come in a game we were both on, like the 49ers corner staying healthy.
Yeah, seriously. All right, let's get to the week 4 games. Before we do, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. All that would help us out a lot. Start with the Thursday night game. The Jaguars are at the Bengals. This line opened up Bengals -7.5. It's still 7.5. I know you like to bet on these standalone games. So which side are you betting on this week?
So I say that I'm not betting this one, which means I really don't like it. I probably will end up betting it, but I just don't like this line at all. I'm just not sure the Bengals should be 7.5 point favorites. I'm not a believer in the Jaguars. You'll never mistake me for that. But the Bengals just beat a Steelers team that isn't good at all. Like, I know a lot of people coming into the season thought the Steelers still have a good defense and all that. And maybe Big Ben will be back and healthy a little bit, but he's not, and the defense hasn't been as good because they are banged up. So I feel like their win over the Steelers is going to be a little bit overblown. Thankfully, it hasn't moved the line too much here. But I feel like on a short week, it usually favors the better team, which is the Bengals. But I'm just not confident that the Jaguars won't be able to get a backdoor cover here. They almost got a backdoor cover last week against the Cardinals. They were leading at halftime against them as well. And if you look at the Bengals injury report, T. Higgins was a non-participant in Monday's practice estimation. I haven't had time to look today, but there were some guys on there that were non-participants. Chidobe Awuzie, Riley Reef, they're nicked up at least. So even if they do participate, like, are they going to be at 100%? I'm not sure. And the Bengals, they have a better defense than they've had in the past, but they can still be beaten. So the Jaguars have some offensive weapons. If Urban Meyer can actually figure out how to get Trevor Lawrence to use them properly, I think that they could stay in this one. At the same time, I don't want to bet on Urban Meyer. He's somehow managing to make Trevor Lawrence look absolutely awful at times. So my lean here is on Jacksonville. I don't think that they win, but I think they can cover a 7.5 point spread against a Bengals team that I think is not great. I think they're average. I think they should win this game, but I just don't like the line. I don't like it being more than a touchdown. So I'll pick the Jaguars in office pools, but I'm not betting this one, which is a big deal because I always say I'm going to bet these ones, and I probably still will, but I'm not putting much on it at all.
I set it up that way that you would be betting on one of these teams, and I don't blame you for not betting this game because it's a tough one to predict. I think the Bengals are the better team, obviously, which benefits them on Thursday night. With the shorter week, it benefits the superior team. The problem is that the spread is so large. Like the Bengals, like you said, they're a mediocre team. 2 weeks ago, they lost to the Bears, so kind of remember that. If you're just thinking about their most recent win over the Steelers, and which, like you said, is misleading. I completely agree with that. The problem is that the Jaguars are 0-3. They haven't covered the spread yet. Although, they were up 19-10 against the Cardinals in the third quarter. I know part of that was a byproduct of that 68-yard field goal that was a turn for a touchdown, which is still absolutely ridiculous. I think this game could be close. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if, the Jaguars are hanging around and Trevor Lawrence throws an interception and then the Bengals, they kick a field goal or score a touchdown and make it like a 10-point margin and they cover. So this is just too tight for me. I'm not gonna bet this game at all. I think this line is kind of where it should be. Although the advanced spread on this game was 6.5, now 7.5. So there's a little bit of value at Jacksonville.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Just the moving through the key number of 7 too. That's kind of a big deal. I figured it would move a little bit from the advanced line because they beat the Steelers. If it had been a couple points, I probably would be thinking more about betting on Jacksonville, but my lean on them is probably all I have right now. Michael in the comments said, give me Cincinnati in a teaser. I would like that approach. If you're desperate to bet this Thursday night game, teasing the 7.5 with something else, you'd go through, I think, 3 key numbers, right? 7, 4, and 3. Actually 7, 6, 4, and 3. Yeah. So that would be a good approach if you could find a good thing to pair it with here. So I would be down for that. Maybe that's what I'll end up doing to get some action on the game.
Yeah, I think they're a good teaser target. I think you could make them one leg of a teaser for sure. We had a question from Chris saying, Walt, are you releasing these on iTunes anymore? I wasn't aware that they weren't on iTunes, so we'll look into it. Normally you can download these on iTunes, but I'm kind of surprised to hear that they're not there. So I'll ask around and see what's going on. We're not too savvy in technology here at walterfootball.com. Just before we started recording, I had to close out this Google Chrome browser because my window wouldn't expand or contract. So I don't sometimes you just don't know what's happening. So, all right, next game, the Redskins are at the Falcons. This line open up Redskins -1. It's up to -1.5. Who do you like in this game?
This is another game. I don't really like it that much. And I'm slightly on the Falcons here as a result of that. I mean, I think Washington's definitely the better team, at least personnel wise, but they haven't played well enough to be a road favorite yet, in my opinion. Their defense has been awful. They have a lot of talent and they are just not coming through at all. It's absolutely insane to me. They can barely get pressure with their defensive front. William Jackson and Kendall Fuller have been terrible in the secondary. Landon Collins has not played well, and they don't have enough talent at linebacker. So they haven't stopped anyone. I mean, this is just absurd to me, but they are allowing the second most yards per game in the NFL, 430 yards per game, and the fourth most points per game at 30.7. Now, I know that's a little bit skewed because they just got beaten badly in a blowout by the Bills, but it's just, we thought this was a borderline elite defense, and they have not shown anything yet. And it's just stunning to me. So I'm not willing to trust them as road favorites right now. I don't trust either of these teams to win. So in that type of toss-up, I will take Atlanta because we're getting a tiny bit of value with them as home underdogs. But I have really no interest in this game because Matt Ryan and the Falcons passing attack has not looked good, but I think that they could possibly move the ball on Washington's defense unless Washington can somehow fix things. So, I have no interest in betting Washington until they show me something more on defense, especially not as a favorite.
Yeah, I think this is the battle of the most disappointing, personnel in the NFL so far. Like you could have put Buffalo there last week after Josh Allen struggled, passing the ball the first 2 games, but then he was awesome against Washington in the third game. Here, you have Atlanta, and people didn't really expect much out of Atlanta, although I think people thought that Calvin Ridley was going to have a big year with Julio Jones gone. He hasn't been that great. Kyle Pitts, he didn't have a catch until the fourth quarter last week. So those two have been disappointing, and Matt Ryan hasn't played as well as people may have thought he would. he was still drafted in fantasy leagues, and he just hasn't produced. Although he did have a nice drive at the end to win the game last week. But then you have the Redskin defense, which just hasn't been good at all. Like the pass rush has been, it's been fine, but not the dominant sort of, like force you would expect it to be. And then you talked about how players in their secondary have struggled. Their linebacking core is a disaster. This defense, it's so shocking that they've allowed so many yards. Yeah, they played the Chargers, they played the Bills, like two great offenses, but they couldn't stop the Giants either. So like it's just been so brutal. But I'm going to stick with them here. I know they haven't covered the spread yet. They've been a money pit for me basically. So I'm not going to bet this game. But I still like them to cover. The one key factor though is that Atlanta is flying to London next week. I think teams have kind of gotten used to that over the years. But since the pandemic started, like this might be the first time the Atlanta players and coaches have flown overseas. So I think that might be a big deal. It might be a distraction, especially coming off a win at the final second. So I'm going to stick with Washington one more week. We'll see if they disappoint me again, but they're not going to cost me any money because I'm not going to bet this game.
Yeah, I may well flip sides to you at that point. I had thought about the London angle because I forgot the London game was next week. This happens every year. I forget when the first London game is, and it shocks me that it's already happening. But I'm going to stick with Atlanta for now. I'll probably monitor practice and injury reports, see if anything pops up. But yeah, this is definitely a no bet for me. And Tony just said that you just showed the comment.
Yeah,
Texans are not beating the Patriots. Texans are not beating the Patriots. I'd be stunned if that happens, but. Stranger things have happened, but no, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about the. I don't know if the Texans are going to win another game this year. We kind of like said it. Yeah, like they remind me of the Jaguars in 2020. They won the first game, then they lost their next 15. I could see the Texans finishing 1-16. Unless maybe Tyrod Taylor comes back and changes things, but I don't think they're winning with Davis Mills. The next game is a game I have more interest in is the Lions at the Bears. This line opened up Bears -3. It's still -3. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Lions here. I mean, let's recap what we know about this game. We don't know who the Bears quarterback is going to be. It's either going to be Andy Dalton coming off an injury, Justin Fields with a potentially banged up hand, or Nick Foles. And Matt Nagy won't say who it's going to be. No matter who it is, I don't like him. I don't like the situation there. We know that the Bears have a terrible offensive line, so that's going to hurt whoever's quarterback. The only one that's mobile enough to escape the pocket is Justin Fields, but Matt Nagy refuses to even move the pocket for him, so what's the point in playing him? And I wrote a piece about that for Sporting News, and it's just like, Matt Nagy did nothing to help Justin Fields at his debut. He let him sit back there and get sacked. He didn't run the ball, and he didn't run any sort of mobile quarterback plays. And that leads me to my next point. We know that Matt Nagy's seat is roasting hot at this point. It would not surprise me if they lose to the Lions and his seat gets hotter. Maybe they don't move on from him in season, but there's a reason I thought he would be the most likely coach to be fired in season if it happens this year. His offense has just not lived up to potential at all. It had 1 net yard last week, which is ridiculous. And then you look at the Lions on the other side, and Dan Campbell is doing exactly what I thought he would do when he was hired. He gets guys to play hard, and Detroit doesn't have a lot of talent there. They have a lot of young guys fighting for jobs, and they're playing pretty well. They're playing above. They're kind of punching above their weight class right now. They really barely missed beating the Ravens last week. It took a literal historic effort and a Justin Tucker crow hop 66-yard field goal that bounced in off the crossbar to beat the Lions. And the Ravens are, a playoff team and contender. I don't think the Bears are that this year. So I'm very much on the Lions here. I think they have a good chance to get their first win here. So I'm going to be on them for a unit or two. I just don't see why they should be the underdog in this one because Matt Nagy's just not going to get anything out of the quarterback position unless he plays Justin Fields, he's healthy, and he drastically changes how that offense looked compared to how it looked against the Browns.
So you make a great point about Matt Nagy and maybe being fired soon, and the players might quit on him. So I like the Bears to be honest. But you may have talked me off that ledge. I think I'm still going to take them, but I may not bet them as heavily as I would. So a couple of reasons why I like the Bears. Like, first of all, the advanced spread on this game is Bears -6, and it's down to 3. So we're getting good value, at least with the spread. And the spread dropped so much because of two things. Like, one, Obviously, the Bears allowed 9 sacks to the Browns, and they lost 26-6 with 1 net yard of offense, which is ridiculous. And 2, we had the Lions almost beating Baltimore, which I think people were impressed by. If it wasn't for that, non-call in the delay of game, which, by the way, I don't know if they reset the game clock, but I feel like that was a really quick 40 seconds. So I think the Lions have a legitimate right there, but I'm not sure if the play clock was reset too. So I think that's something to look into. Anyway, so the Lions almost beat Baltimore. So I think people are impressed by that. But at the same time, I feel like Baltimore had a very sloppy game. Marquise Brown dropped 3 long passes. They were just not – Baltimore's not playing up to its ability. I think they were coming off that big win against the Chiefs. Let's remember that half their defense was out, due to restrictions. And then on the other side, the Bears, or before they beat the Browns, or before they lost to the Browns, they'd beaten the Bengals, and it was like a 20-10 game, and before a late touchdown. So I think that the Bears, I feel like they're a little bit better than the Lions. I know they have issues with their offensive line, but Detroit does too. Detroit's offensive line is a concern, and I think with the pass rushes in this game, Chicago, as long as it has Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, they'll be able to put a lot of pressure on Jared Goff and stop the run. Whereas I'm not sure the Lions can put as much pressure, like nearly as much pressure, on the Bears quarterback this week, especially if Trey Flowers misses another game, like he was out last week. So, and another thing, one last thing, like I've like over the years, I feel like if a team has a gripe, and they're complaining about getting screwed by officiating, they don't play well the next week. And I think the Lions, coming off that brutal loss, I just think that they could be flat here against the Bears. But you make a good point about Dan Campbell getting his players to play hard, so I think that could happen. So I'm still going to be on the Bears, but like you said about Matt Nagy, I feel like we should be cautious about betting him.
Yeah, I think that's what it boils down to me, because I think personnel-wise, Chicago has the better team. They have better offensive weapons. They have a better defense. Offensive line, I give the edge to. I would give the edge to Detroit. And quarterback, it's a real toss-up if Justin Fields improves. He has the most upside of any quarterback. But if you had to tell me you have to pick one quarterback of these to start a game for you now after Fields' performance last week, I might just go safe and go with Jared Goff, as unappealing as that may sound. But yeah, I can see why you would be on the Bears here. The line did move a lot, but I think that's partially because the quarterback situation there, like we don't know who's going to start. And I think if Nick Foles starts, if he's back there, he's even less, he's so immobile that if that offensive line doesn't hold up, he could be in trouble even against Detroit. But I agree with you that Trey Flowers is a big deal here. So we're going to have to see what happens there. But I just love Dan Campbell. I just want to be on his side. I'm taking the coach that seems to be trending up as opposed to the guy who's trending down. But I do like your argument, so I can see the side for it.
Yeah, Tony's asking, is Matt Nagy taking too much heat? What if Fields isn't as good as advertised? So you wrote about this, so I'll let you take it away.
All right, so you cannot say Fields isn't as good as advertised yet because he's played one game at the NFL level. He was always going to take some time to develop. That's what we forget with these rookie quarterbacks, right? The rookies so far this year that have started are 1-10 outright, and the only win was Mac Jones beating Zach Wilson. So one of the rookies had to win as a starter. I think Matt Nagy deserves a ton of heat. He had a lot of time to develop Mitch Trubisky, never did it. Now he's supposed to develop Justin Fields, and what he did was put Fields in the backfield in a situation that was not suited to him at all. He basically had him run the Andy Dalton offense, where Dalton is not mobile. I mean, he used to be a little bit more mobile when he was younger, but he's not mobile anymore, really. So Fields was just a sitting duck back there behind a poor offensive line against Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. And Matt Nagy just didn't put a moving pocket back there at any point to try to help Fields, try to get him on the move and use that athleticism. So I don't think that was on Fields. I mean, we'll see how he develops at the next level. It's going to take some time for us to tell, but that game plan was all Matt Nagy there. Justin Fields having a bad first game, maybe some of it's on him, but I think a lot of it was Nagy giving him zero help.
Yeah, I mean, Fields held the ball a long time at Ohio State, and like you have to know that this pass rush is going to get to him, especially behind the bad offensive line. So, like you said, a moving pocket, get Fields on the move, have some creative play designs for him, get him to release the ball quickly. Some screens and stuff like that to really ease off the pass rush. It felt like the Bears made absolutely no adjustments to this. Like it just didn't seem like Matt Nagy probably thought like, hey, we'll block better next time. It's just not happening. And then their offensive line just so bad. So they had to make some sort of adjustments. They didn't do it. And Fields played well in week 2 in relief of Andy Dalton. So like I'm not completely bearish on him. I think he can rebound, especially with better coaching. But in the easier matchup, I think Fields is going to play better. Like if he's announced as the starter, I would still take the Bears. Because I think he's going to play like he did versus Cincinnati rather than he did against Cleveland. Cleveland has one of the best defenses in the NFL. Detroit has no one like Myles Garrett. I know Trey Flowers is very good, but he's no Myles Garrett, and he may not be 100% anyway. So I think this is an interesting game. I like that we disagree on this, and I think you make some good points about not trusting Matt Nagy and maybe the players even quitting on Matt Nagy possibly if they think he's going to be fired soon. So I initially planned 3 or 4 units on the Bears, but I'm going to drop this maybe like 1 or 2 units.
Yeah, and I'll probably be 1 or 2 units on the Lions, so we'll counteract each other. At least one of us will profit, unless there's a late pick switch on my end.
Yeah, we'll see about injuries too. Do the Ravens defensive players are they going to be available this Sunday? Jorge asks. I think so. I haven't seen anything saying otherwise. So we'll see. They'll be back. I think that's an interesting game too. We'll talk about that later. So the next game is Titans at the Jets. This line opened up Titans -7.5. It's up to 8. Who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Titans. I want nothing to do with Zach Wilson at this point. He's going to have to show me a lot more than what he showed so far. The Jets so far this season on offense are averaging 6.7 points per game, 5 sacks allowed per game, and 2.3 turnovers per game. So you're telling me that his sacks plus turnovers combined are more than the amount of points his offense is scoring. And that doesn't entirely fall on Zach Wilson. I want to make that abundantly clear. But he's got to be better than that to go toe to toe with the Titans. I know the Titans defense isn't that great, but they just held the Colts to 16 points. And I think the Colts are better than the Jets. That doesn't seem like any sort of hot take there. Carson Wentz was a little bit beat up behind that offensive line. So that kind of helped the Titans do that last week. This week, they're just going to tee off against Zach Wilson. He's holding the ball too long. We mentioned Justin Fields has been holding the ball too long since Ohio State and did a bit last week as well. And while, I think the Jets defense hasn't been awful, but they haven't faced a guy like Derrick Henry yet. Like they're allowing 111 rushing yards per game before facing a Henry type guy. So I think that Tennessee should be able to cover here. I do have one concern. AJ Brown's week to week with a hamstring injury. Teams missing their number one receiver can sometimes fail to live up to expectations. But I think that because they're playing such a weak opponent, it won't matter too much. Because if the Jets score like even a lot for them, that we're talking about like 20 points, like that would be, I think, their season high. So I'm going to be on the Titans here. I've got 1 to 3 units put down. I want to check out the injury reports and see what's up with AJ Brown before I lock into something. But I'm in no mood to bet on Zach Wilson and won't be until he shows something more.
Oh man, I'm betting on Zach Wilson this week. I think this line's too high. The event spread in this game is -6. It's up to 8. So we're going through 2 key numbers of 6 and 7. And this is Zach Wilson's easiest matchup by far in the NFL so far. Week 1 they played the Panthers, and we kind of really didn't know much about the Panthers, but they've been rated very high defensively. All their young players have really improved. They have a great pass rush, some terrific cornerbacks, good linebackers. So Carolina's defense is very good. And then week 2, Bill Belichick, who fooled him into 4 interceptions. And then last week, Vic Fangio is another great defensive-minded coach. Now he gets the Titans, who don't have a good defense at all. I think their cornerbacks are not very good. Their pass rush outside of Jeffrey Simmons is pretty lackluster. I know they just limited the Colts, but Carson Wentz couldn't move the ball. Couldn't move around at all. Like he was limping around at times. He shouldn't have even played. I thought that was kind of ridiculous that they put him out there like that. So I'm not going to really take much into account from that game. Plus, the Titans are coming off that big win against the divisional opponent. It's like really the only other team that could beat them in the division. Now they're playing the Jets, and I don't think they're going to be too focused for this game. Like they're going to be like, okay, we could easily beat Zach Wilson. So I think we're not going to see the best out of them this week. Whereas the Jets, I feel like they kind of match up not like pretty well against the Titans. I mean, their defensive line is the strength of their defense, and so I think they can maybe limit Derrick Henry a little bit. Like I'm not saying Henry's going to be limited to like 40 or 50 yards or anything, but I don't think Henry's going to explode for a big game. And then, as you said, AJ Brown's out, and Julio Jones is banged up too. He barely played in the second half. He took a hard hit when he was running down an intercepting player in the second quarter, and he barely played after that. So I think, he may play in this game, but he may not be 100%. So you're going to have Ryan Tannehill like leaning on Nick Westbrook and Chester Rogers. Like, it doesn't sound like a team that should be favored by 8 points to me, even against Zach Wilson. I know Wilson's absolutely terrible, but like I said, this is the easiest defense he's played so far. So I think that he can cover the large spread. I think the Titans are going to win by 6 or 7 points. So I'm going to take the +8.
Yeah, I can see why you do that because of the line movement there. I just can't bring myself to trust Zach Wilson yet. Maybe he'll prove me wrong against the worst defense, but I think that the Titans will come out and just kind of run the ball down their throats. I think Henry's going to have a big game because he can have a big game against anyone. I don't disagree with your point that the defensive line is the best part of the Jets defense, though. And maybe Robert Saleh has them motivated after a few pretty bad and awful losses, just that could not have been fun to be a part of. So I'll be interested to see how Zach Wilson does against this defense. But I think my strategy right now is to fade rookie quarterbacks when I can. So I'm gonna stick on the Titans, but I'll probably be closer to the 1 unit mark. And if Brown and Julio Jones are both out, then I might switch to just office pool purposes because I had missed Julio Jones leaving or not playing most of the second half there.
Yeah, if they're both out, this is going to be a big play for me on the Jets. If Julio plays, then it's going to be like a 2-unit pick or something. All right, moving on. The Browns at the Vikings. This line opened up Browns -1.5. It's up to 2. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Browns again. I know we were both on the Seahawks last week and we kind of got burned there. But as we discussed, the Seahawks were up in that game early and they just did not deliver. They did not finish things off there. And Minnesota's defense played much better than expected, especially in that second half there. But they still have a bottom 5 defense, the Vikings do, and they're going to struggle a lot to contain Cleveland in their run game. I think specifically Nick Chubb will get going. And I like what the Browns have done with Jarvis Landry out. They have Odell Beckham Jr. back, which is great, but they also used Kareem Hunt way more as a receiver last week against the Bears. He had 7 targets, which was second most on the team. I think if you can get Kareem Hunt involved as a receiver and out of the backfield as a runner, you're going to create some looks that can confuse this Vikings defense. And I know Cleveland just held the Bears to 1 net yard, so like their numbers are a bit skewed, but they rank as a top 3 defense in terms of total yards allowed. So they should be able to get some pressure on Kirk Cousins too. His offensive line is missing Christian Darrisaw. I don't think the Vikings are as good as that win over the Seahawks indicates that they might be. So I'm willing to go with the Browns here at -2. I think that they'll be solid. So I got 1 or 2 units on them. And maybe the Vikings will prove me wrong, but I think that the Browns are a superior team at this point.
Yeah, we agree on this. I like the Browns. I agree with what you said about them putting more pressure on Kirk Cousins. I don't trust Minnesota's offensive line. Kirk Cousins had an easy time last week, but he was playing the Seahawks, who really can't put any pressure on the quarterback. Kerry Hyder got hurt early in that game, and I think that really hurt Seattle's defense. Not that I liked Seattle's defense very much in that game, but it got a lot worse for them. And then Seattle was missing 2 offensive linemen in that game as well. So, once they got up 17 points, they didn't score again. I have a feeling the Browns are definitely going to score more. Then again, like you look at the Vikings, they're 1-2 right now, but they could be 3-0. It was like 2 plays really that are preventing them from being 3-0. One was the Dalvin Cook fumble across midfield in overtime in week 1. And then the other one was the missed field goal, which is like a pretty easy field goal for Greg Joseph at the end of the Arizona game. So they could be 3-0 right now. And if they were 3-0, they would be favored. So, you could kind of say that the Vikings, we're getting some line value with the Vikings. But then again, they haven't like the only upper echelon teams that they played so far is Arizona, and I think that game was closer than it should have been because of those Kyler Murray interceptions. Like I feel like Cleveland is just a lot better than Minnesota, even though Minnesota could be 3-0 right now. So, we're not getting any line value here. There's no motivational angle. There's like no injury news that we know of yet that'll make a big impact. So I'm going to be on Cleveland for a non-wager right now. But if we get some injury news in Cleveland's favor, then I'm going to bet the Browns.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. I was told by someone on Twitter, though, that the Vikings dominated the Cardinals and they didn't need those interceptions to keep that game close, though. So, yeah, that was someone who absolutely was not actually paying attention to that game because without those interceptions, it would have been like 45-21 or something. But yeah, I agree. I think that the Vikings, their record doesn't quite represent how close they've been in each game, but at the same time, like they could be anything from 0-3 to 3-0, and it wouldn't surprise me. They've been in every game, but I just think the Browns are probably they're probably the most balanced team that they've played so far in terms of defensive talent and offensive talent. So if we're getting Cleveland at under 3, I will wager at least a unit on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I just looked at the stats. Arizona outgained Minnesota by almost 100 yards in that game and averaged almost one more yard per play than Minnesota.
Yep.
And the Vikings, they didn't have anything going offensively in the second half in that game. Like they got off to a quick start and then they kind of, really didn't do much. It was Kyler Murray's interceptions that gave Minnesota a chance, which was regrettable because we both had Arizona in Super Contest. So let's move on to the next game. The Colts are at the Dolphins. The line opened up Dolphins -1.5. It's up to 2. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I like the Dolphins in the Jacoby Brissett revenge game. They played pretty well against the Raiders last week. They had legitimate chances to win. I thought that they did well to come back. The Raiders, they played pretty hard in overtime, but I thought Brissett's effort on that game-tying drive was pretty good. Earned us a much-needed cover, so I was happy about that as well. I know that the Colts defense played pretty well against the Titans last week, but they're still lost on offense. Carson Wentz is going to need to get healthier, but Quentin Nelson's banged up. T.Y. Hilton's not coming back quite yet. So it's going to be harder for them to move the ball against the Dolphins. And I'm going to be watching Carson Wentz especially close because if he's anything like he was last week when, like you said, he couldn't move, I'm not going to want anything to do with him. And I think the Colts really shouldn't be playing him. Like you said, it just doesn't make sense. I get it. They're in dire straits. They don't want to have to start Brett Hundley or Jacob Eason at this point, but could either of them be that much worse than an immobile Wentz? I mean, maybe, but you can't just put Wentz back there and expect if he's got a high ankle sprain and another sprained ankle that he's going to be effective. So maybe things will change, but as long as he's out there and not fully healthy, I'm going to like to fade him if I can. The Colts, they do have one advantage in this game. Miami's defense is not very good against the run. They allow 136 rushing yards per game. That's 6th most in the league. So I could see the Colts going run heavy in this game and maybe keeping it close. But this line is under 3, so I'm preferring the Dolphins because I think they have the better team overall, or at least maybe they're the more healthy team overall right now. I think when fully healthy, the Colts are probably better, but I think I'm going to trust Brissett in this one. I've got this for 0-1 units though, so you could probably convince me otherwise.
I wanted to ask you a question. Do you think the Dolphins are a good team?
I think that they have some good units on their team,
Right.
but I don't know if they're a good team.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I can't decide if they're a good team or not. Like I feel like they're an average team, at the very least. I don't know if they're a good team, and I say that because I like betting good teams missing their starting quarterbacks, and that's kind of like one of the reasons why I bet the Dolphins last week. I thought they were a good team, and they didn't look as good as I thought against the Raiders. I know they covered, but they were down. Was it 24-15 at one point, and they really had some troubles until the end. And then Peyton Barber nearly scored in overtime to really ruin that cover. Yeah, like I said before, they made Peyton Barber look like Jim Brown, and so Jonathan Taylor, obviously a billion times better than Peyton Barber. So that's a concern for me in this game. But Carson Wentz's injury is the primary factor here. I like to fade injured quarterbacks. And, if Carson Wentz had one sprained ankle, you could be like, okay, maybe he'll feel better. But he has 2 sprained ankles. Like, why is he playing? Especially given that, if he plays 75% of the snaps or more, the Colts are going to have to surrender their first-round pick to the Eagles. So it's like, what are the Colts doing? I feel like they should be playing Eason or Hundley. One of them. I feel like Eason's probably the better option. But yeah, I'm going to be on the Dolphins. Plus, it could be close to 90 degrees in Miami, which does not bode well for the Colts in their dark blue jerseys. I know that really that didn't play a factor in the Bills game, but the Bills are up so large, and the Dolphins made a lot of mistakes in that game, so it didn't end up mattering. But I think it might end up mattering in this game. So I'm going to be on the Dolphins, maybe for 2 units or so, really depending on the injury situation. If the Colts are missing Quentin Nelson in this game and Braden Smith, then I'm going to be even larger on the Dolphins.
Yeah, if they're without those 2 offensive linemen, I'll be on them pretty heavily as well because those are arguably their 2 best offensive linemen. You can make a case for Ryan Kelly. I think Eric Fisher's a solid left tackle too, but those are probably two of their top 3 offensive linemen there. I think the Dolphins question is going to be one that we're going to have to answer over the next few weeks because they're like really an enigma to me right now because I like them. I like their coaches. I like their secondary especially, but their trench play is just not good. Like, I want them to have a better offensive line. I want them to have better defensive line personnel. If they had that, they could be a really high level team, I think, and you'd be perfectly fine trusting them with Jacoby Brissett in there. But if their lines don't play well and they don't shore up the run defense thing, then it's going to be hard to trust them. But I do like them in this spot. This is kind of like, I want to fade the Colts, and maybe in the future I'll want to fade the Dolphins. But for now, I think Miami's the better side.
Yeah, it's their offensive line that's kind of the big factor here. I know they can't stop the run either, but their offensive line is just so bad, which kind of makes you wonder why they didn't draft Penei Sewell. Jalen Waddle's a good player, don't get me wrong, but like, they had Sewell in their hands and they let him go. Parrot's asking, you guys will bet more or less if Dalvin Cook plays. To me, it doesn't matter. Alexander Madison's a great backup. And usually, for injuries to matter to me, they have to have multiple players at the same position. So, if Cook is out and then Madison suffers a midweek injury and he's out too, suddenly I would like Cleveland a lot more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I like Alexander Madison. I was very bullish on him last year, and he proved last week that he is just as good as Dalvin Cook. Maybe a tiny bit worse, but you can get by with him as a starter is the point. So I'm not worried about if Cook misses that game.
Yeah. All right. Another question. Frank Reich, the first coach to be fired. You mentioned Matt Nagy. I actually thought about this today. Like, the Colts are 0-3. They had big expectations with Wentz. I actually like Reich as a coach, so I wouldn't do it. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, I don't think he's quite there yet. I think that they would kind of give him this as a mulligan of like, Wentz got hurt in training camp and then got hurt to start the season. And frankly, the idea of rebuilding with Wentz as your quarterback and Frank Reich not as your coach should scare off the Colts from making that type of move. So I think that would be a move that you would consider next year if Wentz doesn't round into form. Then you can kind of clean house and say it was time to move on at that point. But I would stick with Reich for now. I agree with you. I think he's a solid coach. He's just in a bad injury situation right now.
Yeah, I agree. All right, next game, the Panthers at the Cowboys. This line open up Cowboys -5. It's still -5. So who do you like here?
Yeah, I kind of like the Cowboys here. I'm not super into this game, but for me, it's about the loss of Christian McCaffrey. I know we were just talking about how we don't really care about running back injuries unless there are multiple injuries at the position, but running backs for the Panthers, Christian McCaffrey here is an exception because he serves more as like one of their top receiving weapons than a running back. He does kind of a little bit of everything. We saw that against the Texans when he exited the game with the hamstring injury. They couldn't do as much offensively. They didn't run the ball as well. And Sam Darnold didn't have as many check down options because McCaffrey wasn't there getting open. So it kind of limited what they can do. Maybe Chuba Hubbard will be better this time around with more time to prepare. He got better as the game went along. They also have Royce Freeman, who's proven to be a solid fill-in. But I'm just not willing to bet on Sam Darnold without Christian McCaffrey because that means he's going to have to really lead this offense. And then you got DJ Moore is going to be up against Trayvon Diggs, who's having an excellent start to the season. He just had a pick 6 against the Eagles and has done a lot to limit top receivers this year. So after that, if you take away DJ Moore, who's Darnold going to throw to? You got Robbie Anderson. You've got Terrace Marshall. You've got Tommy Tremble. Anderson's proven, but Tremble and Marshall are both rookies. So it's kind of hard to trust them. And then if you look at Dallas, their offense has been excellent this year. Dak Prescott really looks like he's taken a step forward to me. He looks a lot better. I know he still has a lot of talent around him, but he's gotten by without Lyle Collins and Michael Gallup and performed very well offensively. So I've been impressed with him so far this year. Carolina's defense ranks top in the league in yards allowed, so that's a concern. They're only allowing 10 points per game. They also haven't faced an offense like Dallas yet. They faced the Jets and the Texans are two of the teams they faced, and then they played the Saints and did a really good job of limiting them. But they've not faced a team with weapons like Dallas, and they lost J.C. Horn, which isn't a stacked injury, but he was one of their starters on the outside at cornerback. I think Dallas can take advantage of that. So I'm going to trust Dak Prescott just because he looks excellent right now. I'm not going to bet a ton on this. I've got another 0-1 unit bet written down here.
So the spread's 5. Curious to hear your answers to this if you haven't seen it yet. Have you seen? Did you see what the advanced spread on this game was?
I'm going to guess it was 2.5, but I did not see what it was.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you what you thought because, first of all, the advanced spread was made before the McCaffrey injury, and second, it was made before Dallas absolutely annihilated the Eagles on Monday night. So 2.5 sounds about right. Now, I would have guessed the same thing. The advanced spread in this game is 4. So this line only moved 1 point, which is very confusing. I thought that once we saw those two things, McCaffrey gone and the Cowboys blowout on national TV, I thought we would see a spread, moving from 4 to like 6 or 6.5, maybe even 7 if the public is going to go nuts with this. It's only 5, which is kind of like making me think that the public or the sports books are kind of like baiting people into taking Dallas. The sports books have gotten crushed in the first 3 weeks. Like the public is just killing the sports books right now. So they kind of have to get an edge here. And I think that this line is a little too high. I made this line 3.5. I think these teams are pretty close to one another, especially given that Carolina has had more time to prepare for this game by a long shot. They played on Thursday night, and Dallas is only going to have 6 days to prepare instead of the 9 for Carolina. So, and I like Carolina's coaching staff better than Dallas's anyway. I agree with what you're saying, though, about Dallas's playmakers maybe getting the best of Carolina's defense, but I really like the personnel in Carolina's defense. They traded for C.J. Henderson. A.J. Bouye is going to be back for the first game, playing his first game in the uniform. So that's going to be key to defending the receivers. And Carolina's run defense, I think, is going to be good in this game. I know Dallas just ran all over the Eagles, but the Eagles are missing Brandon Graham and kind of expected the Eagles to fold in that regard. I think Carolina is just going to be better prepared for this game. And like I said, I think this line's a little too high. So I'm going to take the +5. I just wish we were getting +6 or +6.5. So kind of disappointed in that regard, but I expect the public to be all over Dallas.
Yeah, so I had seen when I wrote this line down, I had it at -4.5. I think that was over at FanDuel Sportsbook, was where I was getting my lines today. If this had been over 6 or even up to 7, I would definitely be on you with Carolina. So I don't think that that's a bad pick at all. I think that they have a very good defense. It's just for me, I'm not willing to trust Sam Darnold, and I think Dallas's defense has just played well enough lately for me to be willing to trust them. Dan Quinn has kind of made the impact that the Cowboys were hoping, but I don't dislike Carolina at +5. So I'm going to probably switch this to a no bet on Dallas. And I'll watch the injury report throughout the week as well. But you're right. This might be a trap line. I might be falling right into their trap.
Yeah, could be. Like I said, I was surprised by the spread and I was disappointed. But usually when the spread is lower than it should be, kind of favors that team. Kind of like last week when the Bengals are only +3 against the Steelers. I know the Sharps moved that line down, but I expected the line to be bigger because the Steelers are still a public team. And yet the Cincinnati beat Pittsburgh easily. So kind of makes you wonder if the sports books know something that the public doesn't. So I guess we'll see. The next game is the Giants at the Saints. This line opened up Saints -8. It's down to 7.5. I have more interest in this game than I initially anticipated. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, see, this is another situation where I want to fade the Giants. I don't love the number here, though, so I'm kind of torn on this one. But the Giants, they couldn't beat the Falcons at home. That's like the Falcons. I mean, come on. The Falcons have not been good this year. Their offensive line is bad. The receivers are banged up. The Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are dealing with hamstring injuries. Daniel Jones isn't playing well. Evan Engram came back and did absolutely nothing. So I just look at both. I look at all of the weapons that they don't have and how their offense hasn't looked good except for when they played Washington. And I look at the Saints, and they just dismantled New England. I wouldn't read a ton into that because I think New England was looking ahead a little to the Tampa Bay game. And, the Saints were one of their first good defenses that they've really played as a whole. So I think that played a role in that. I think that the motivational edge here, though, for me, lies with the Saints because they're returning home for the first time of the season. They've spent all this time in Texas, I think at the TCU facility since the hurricane hit. They've been on the road. They've been nomads, and they went 2-1 on the road. Now they get to come back to the Superdome, face what should be a relatively easy opponent, but one that does have enough defensive talent to slow down this offense. So I think that I want to go with New Orleans, but part of me also looks at this line and looks at the Giants defense and says, can they keep it close? Can they get enough pressure if Eric McCoy's out to rattle Jameis Winston? So this is another one that I'm kind of torn on. I'm on the Saints right now, but I'm curious to see if you like the motivational edge enough, or if you're more on the Giants here.
See, the motivational edge doesn't really, I don't think it factors in here because the Saints are such a large favorite. It's not like they're going to have like a rallying cry to beat a better opponent. Like they're expected to beat the Giants. So I think that coming home, they might be even a little distracted by being home for the first time and having to, repair stuff, if their houses were hurt by the hurricane and stuff like that, or like helping out friends and family. So I wonder if they're going to be distracted, especially coming off the win. I love the Giants in this game, and I can't believe I'm saying that. It really kind of sickens me, to be honest. Like betting Daniel Jones heavily is just, I feel like I'm going to be kicking myself when he throws 2 pick sixes or has a fumble return for a touchdown. It's just going to be horrible, and I'm going to complain about it a lot. But let me just tell you this. Jameis Winston is favored by more than a touchdown. Like Jameis Winston is favored by more than a touchdown. Like that shouldn't happen. Like it really shouldn't, especially given that he's going to be missing possibly 2 offensive linemen. Terron Armstead's out and Eric McCoy may not play. And so, the Giants defensive line is really good. They should be able to pressure Winston a lot, force him into some turnovers. They have good cornerbacks who should be able to limit Callaway and Deontay Harris. So I feel like the Giants defense should be able to kind of restrict what the Saints are doing. I know the Saints scored like 28 points against the Patriots, but 14 came off those Mac Jones interceptions. They weren't Mac Jones's fault. They were drop passes. But if it weren't for those interceptions, they would have scored only 14 points. And so I think that we could expect a similar output, I think, from the Saints offense. Like I think they're going to score like 14 or 17 points. And that just means that Daniel Jones has to score 10 to cover the spread. And like maybe that doesn't happen. But I think that the Giants should be able to hang around and to cover the spread. I think this line's way too high. I made this line Saints -5, which I think is pretty close to where it should be. And I just think that people are overreacting to the Saints win at New England, which, like I said, I don't know if that would have happened if the 2 passes didn't bounce off the receiver's hands and into the arms of a Saints player. So, yeah, I like the Giants. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I do.
Yeah, my family, who we're all from New England here, were very, very anti-Jonnu Smith after he dropped that one directly into the Saints' arms. So I'm going to switch my pick to side with you on the Giants because one factor that I forgot in my research, Terron Armstead being out, I believe it was an elbow injury he suffered, right? Or something of that ilk. So, yeah, if he's going to be out, I do not like them as much because Jameis Winston under pressure makes some of the worst throws you will see. I think he had one even last week, too, that he barely got out of the back of the end zone, but he was like falling backwards and he's like launching it. And I audibly, like my dad was watching the game with me and I just go, oh, no. And he wasn't really paying attention. But, yeah, so Jameis Winston under pressure, I don't like that. I was lukewarm on this game outside of the motivational edge, but if you think that there's no motivational edge, I'm willing to side with the Giants on you or this time around. I don't feel good about trusting Daniel Jones. I never do, but at this number, I think it's worth it.
That pass is ridiculous. I remember seeing that, and there was a flag on that play, so even if he threw an interception, it wouldn't have counted. But that flag came out after he released the pass, and he was kind of falling down. So it's not like he saw someone was offside or anything. Like he didn't see it, and I don't understand like what he was thinking by doing that. It's kind of like it seemed like everything that could have went wrong for the Patriots went wrong in that game. Like that pass was intercepted. Those two balls bounced off John Smith's hands, and I forget who the other receiver was, but it's just like this Patriots had just horrible luck in that game. So that final score is not indicative of how those two teams played against each other. Like that should have been like a field goal game, like going either way, which was what the spread was. Like it probably should have been like a 16-13 game or something like that. Instead, the Saints got 14 free points off that turnover.
Yeah, it was frustrating to watch.
Yeah. All right. Next game, Chiefs at the Eagles. Speaking of frustrating teams, the Chiefs haven't covered the spread yet this year. They've come close, but they haven't done it yet. They're 7.5-point favorites at the Eagles. So who do you like in this game?
They've covered the spread in like one of their last 15 games, I think, or something ridiculous like that. I know they're 8-14 officially in their last 22, which is second worst in the league. So, naturally, I'm telling you that now so that I can tell you that I love the Chiefs this week. You brought this up last week in that elite quarterbacks tend to bounce back off of a loss. How about off of two losses? This is Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has lost back-to-back games twice in his career. The first time was in 2018, and that was when they followed that up with a 32-point win over the Raiders. Then the next year they lost 2 in a row and then beat the Broncos by 24 points. I'm going to assume both of those covered the spread. I would assume that the spread was not higher than 32 or 24 in either of those games. So he's 2-0 in that circumstance. And I just don't think that the Eagles are that great. I mean, we saw them struggle against the Cowboys. They were embarrassed on Monday Night Football, and now they have a short week to turn around and play a team that has the best quarterback in the NFL probably right now in Patrick Mahomes. And the Eagles are no longer good against the run. They're 26th ranked run defense in the league because Brandon Graham's not there and their defensive line's just not great against it. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire will be able to help a little bit in that regard as well. He bounced back nicely last week. So there's just everything in this game points at the Chiefs, trends-wise, their performance-wise. And like you mentioned earlier, there were 3 turnovers in a row for the Chiefs in that game that really swung the pendulum in the Chargers' favor. So the Chiefs, if they don't get one of those turnovers, they probably win. It probably takes at least 2 of those not happening for them to cover, but still. The point is that they should have been able to cover last week if all goes well for them. It just didn't. They're not going to have nearly as much trouble against the Eagles. I think that the Chiefs' defense is going to have to play better. They're going to have to really focus on Jalen Hurts because they struggled against Lamar Jackson, obviously. They're going to need to contain Jalen Hurts and his scrambling ability. But so long as they don't get gashed on the ground, I think that they'll be able to hold up enough. And the offense should score at will against the Eagles. So I really like the Chiefs in this scenario. The Eagles are going to have the same problems they had on Monday night. There's not enough time to fix them. And I think Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they are absolutely going to be motivated to win this one. So this is one of my favorite picks of the week. I'm going to be on the Chiefs. I've got 3 units written down. I could go for more.
Yeah, this is a 5-unit pick for me on the Chiefs. I love them this week. Great stats on the Chiefs, having multiple losses in a row. And I expected more out of them last week. They had those 3 sloppy turnovers, but one of them was a no-look pass by Patrick Mahomes where Marcus Kemp, he wasn't expecting the ball anyway. And he didn't expect the no-look pass. So I don't think we're going to see any no-look passes from the Chiefs. I think they're going to have a professional approach to this game. They're 1-2. They can't afford to fall to 1-3, especially with 2 teams in their division having a 3-0 record. They just can't fall 3 games behind. So I think they're going to be playing very hard against the Eagles. Their one weakness, as you said, the run defense. If in an ideal situation, if the Eagles had a healthy offensive line, they could establish Miles Sanders and keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. The problem is that they don't have a healthy offensive line. They're already missing Brandon Brooks. Jordan Mailata didn't play last week. We don't know if he's going to play this week, but they also lost Isaac Solomalo late in that game. So they're going to be down at least 2 offensive linemen, maybe 3 in this game. So that's going to hurt against the Chiefs, who should have Frank Clark back this week. Clark was close to playing last week. He should be back. But even if he's not, I still think the Chiefs are going to dominate in the trenches on both sides of the ball. As you said, Brandon Graham being out is huge. The Eagles held the 49ers to no points in week 2, and then Graham got hurt, and then suddenly the 49ers moved the ball so well. The Graham absence is so enormous for the Eagles because he's such a great player. So the Eagles are so much worse than they were a couple weeks ago heading into the Niners game. And now, like you said, they have a short turnaround coming off a Monday night game. There's not enough time to make adjustments. And you have, Nick Sirianni, who's giving the ball to his primary running back 2 times going against Andy Reid. And I just think that the Chiefs are going to win this one easily.
Yeah, and that's the other problem is like the Eagles don't run the ball enough with their running backs. The one thing they do a lot of is scramble with Jalen Hurts, and as Tony's noting, he doesn't scramble as well as Lamar. No one really does, though. So I think that they'll be better suited to contain that. I think that they're going to have just a really good plan, the Chiefs here, because Andy Reid probably, as soon as he got out of the hospital this week, he was treated for dehydration. So glad to hear that he's okay, first of all. But I'm sure his first thing after that was, hey, let's dive into like how we're going to beat the Eagles this week, and watching the Monday night game and just noting every weakness he can take advantage of. So yeah, I love this. I would love this, maybe even up to like a 9-point line. So I think we're getting good value, even though the 7.5s and 3.5s have burned me this year.
Yeah, the advanced spread on this game was 6.5, and so it rose beyond 7. I still like the Chiefs a lot. Like I don't think it's gonna be close. Last of the early afternoon games, I should say. The Texans are at the Bills. This line opened up Bills minus 17. It's down to 16.5. So getting some value here on the Bills. Who do you like in this game?
I like the Texans in this one. I don't want to say a lot, but more than I like some of the other early slate games. I know what you're thinking. I know Tony out there is probably happy to hear that I'm on the Texans here, but I know what you guys are all thinking. The Texans aren't a good team, and they're starting Davis Mills in his second career game, and that the Bills have won their last 2 games by 22 and 35 points. But here's the deal, right? They're going to play the Chiefs after this game against the Texans, and they're coming off 2 blowout victories. So mentally, they're going to be like, oh, we can handle the Texans. This is going to be easy. So I don't know if they're going to come fully prepared to just pummel the Texans like the spread suggests they should. So I'm a little bit worried about that. And if you look, since 2003, teams that are 14-point underdogs or higher have posted a record of 70, 61, and 4 against the spread. So that's a cover percentage of close to 52, but they're only not covering about 45% of the time. So that's like pretty significant gap there, a 7% gap. So I think the Texans have a good chance of just getting even just a garbage touchdown to make this spread happen. And that's the number one thing to take away from this. All it takes is one weird fluky play for this to get turned into a cover for the Texans. Like Josh Allen and the Bills could be up 31-7 late, and he could get strip sacked on his own 1-yard line. That's not going to matter, but the Texans could score and then get a field goal and cover. So there's just so many ways that things could go wrong for the Bills here. And I think with them looking ahead, I don't think that they're going to take this seriously enough to win this by 2+ touchdowns automatically. So I like the Texans here. They have a rest advantage. I don't think that they're going to beat Buffalo by any means, but I think that if they stay within an arm's length, they can get a backdoor cover, even with Davis Mills at quarterback. So we on the Texans for a couple units here. This is going to be one that maybe I'll be kicking myself for next week, being like, why did I think the Texans would cover against the Bills? But this line is just very high to me, considering what the Bills might be looking ahead to.
I mean, yeah, you're definitely right about the motivational angle. It benefits the Texans here. I feel like the Bills are going to look past them to the Chiefs game. But even if they do, I don't know if I could trust Davis Mills to bet, enough to bet him in this game. And quite frankly, like I don't know if I could trust him enough to pick them for no units in this game. Like I love fading terrible teams with terrible quarterbacks, and Davis Mills is obviously a terrible quarterback. He's the third stringer on this team. He really shouldn't be. I don't know if he really should be in the NFL, quite frankly. Like, I feel like in a couple years, he's not going to be in the pros. So I just don't think, you're talking about like how like some fluky things could happen, and you're absolutely right. I mean, like all it takes is a kickoff return or a fumble return for a touchdown, and then suddenly it's hard for the favorite to cover. But I feel like that kind of stuff is more likely to happen to the Texans. Like I feel like Mills could throw a pick six, and then suddenly it's easy for the Bills to cover because they got 7 free points. So I'm definitely not going to bet the Bills here because they're a huge favorite. Weird things can happen. There's a lot of action on the Bills, and they could be looking ahead. But I still can't take the Texans with Mills. Like if they had a quarterback I could trust, even Tyrod Taylor. Obviously, the spread wouldn't be as high with Taylor, but let's just hypothetically say if Tyrod Taylor were playing this game, and the Bills are 3-0. If they had beaten the Steelers in week 1 and they looked unstoppable, I would like the Texans for sure, but not with Davis Mills. I just can't trust him.
I like Davis Mills a little bit better than you do. I wasn't super high on him coming in the draft, but he did some impressive things on against the Panthers on Thursday night. So I'm hoping that with a little extra time to prepare, he'll be a little bit better. I think that if he can focus on getting the ball to like Brandon Cooks and some of the other playmakers on that Texans team, to use that word, kind of lightly. But Anthony Miller's there. He had a good game against the Panthers. I think if he can distribute the ball and avoid getting under pressure, he should be okay. And should be able to score a little bit. And again, I don't think that like he's not going to come out here and drop like 24 points or anything on the Bills, I don't think. But all you need is to get like 13 points, and then the Bills have to score 30, which they could do, but I'm just not willing to bet on it with the look ahead. So I get why you'd be reluctant to take the Texans, but I think if they didn't have the extra time, I probably wouldn't like them to prepare. But given what I've seen from David Culley thus far, and the fact that Davis Mills did some okay things on short rest, I'm willing to take a shot with them. And again, this might be like me turning back next week, being like, what was I thinking? But I do think there is a way for them to move the ball on the Bills defense. They just got to avoid letting Mills get under too much pressure.
Well, Tony says Davis Mill is our franchise quarterback. Walter will regret these comments in 2 years. We'll see. I don't think I will, but we'll see. I know he's kind of being sarcastic there, but I don't know. I guess you like him more than I do, so you like this game for the Houston more than I do. I'm not betting this game. You are, so I would trust you here. It was kind of like I initially thought I would be picking the Texans, and then it kind of dawned on me that if I hate Mills that much, then I shouldn't pick them at all. So I feel like whether, if you bet this game, it really depends on how much you like Davis Mills, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. And I just like him enough to score. I like him enough to get the cover of 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying that he's going to be the franchise quarterback or anything.
Yeah, for sure. We have a question. Bills in a teaser -9.5 for 10. No, definitely not. Teaser, you want to go through 3, 7, and 6, and obviously 4 because you're going through those. You want to go through those 4 key numbers in teasers. Like teasing this down doesn't really like make much of a difference. Like having an NFL game finish between 10.5 through 16 is so unlikely. Like if the Bills are going to win this game, it's more likely that they're either going to win in a total blowout or it's going to be close because they make some mistakes. Like if the scenario you're saying is true, like if there's a weird pick 6 or something like that, and Davis Mills is not terrible, then the Bills could probably win by 7. I feel like that could happen, or maybe even 10. So yeah, definitely do not tease the Bills.
Yeah, just don't tease. I'd say don't tease big lines in general. Like you could, even on my side, you could hypothetically tease the Texans up 6 points, but it's just rather pointless. You're like, all right, I'm getting the 3rd touchdown worth of security. It's like, if they're going to get blown out, it might be 4 touchdowns. So you're not helping yourself out too much.
Right, exactly. All right, before we get to the late afternoon games, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, and visit the link in the description for the merch store. I am wearing a Walter football shirt, so you can order one of those in any color you want. So definitely help us out, please, if you could. Starting with the Cardinals at the Rams is kind of the big game of the late afternoon slate before we get to the really big game. So Cardinals at the Rams. Rams are -4.5. It opened to -6, and the Sharps have really dragged the spread down to 4.5. So are you with the Sharps here?
I'm actually not. If it had been at 6, I would have been with the Sharps, but I kind of like the Rams at -4.5. I think the line's about right. But if you look at the Rams team, they're just so well built. They are very well rounded. They have an excellent defense. They have a really good offense. Matthew Stafford's playing well, and the Cardinals, they're well built as well. But they have one weakness that we've talked about before. Their cornerbacks aren't always great. They lost Malcolm Butler before the start of the season. That really took out some of their depth. They actually signed Quentin Dunbar today, I think. So I'm interested to see how that works out, but I'm not sure he'll be up to speed for this game against the Rams here. And I know that the matchup with the Cardinals for the Rams could look tough on paper, but Sean McVay has dominated the Cardinals during his time in Los Angeles. I know that's not a whole lot to read into, but he's a legitimate 8-0 against them and has won the games by an average of 20 points per game. And half of those games have been with Kyler Murray. I know he was banged up in some of them, so you can't read into it a ton, but he's generated 6 total touchdowns compared to 7 turnovers. So I think so long as Raheem Morris doesn't go stray way far from what Brandon Staley was doing that was successful against the Cardinals, I think that they're going to be okay in this one. And they'll be able to win this one by maybe a touchdown. And look, we just saw what the Rams did to Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. I know Brady might have been looking ahead a little bit, but they shut down that offense very easily for some of the game. So I thought that I was impressed by what they were able to do. I think that they're going to find similar success against Murray. So I'm going to be on the Rams here. I just think they're the better team right now. I think that the Cardinals defense has enough leaky spots that they're going to be able to score pretty consistently. So I'm on them. I have written for 2 to 3 units right now. But you can tell me why I should be on the Cardinals with you if that's what you're picking. I do not know.
Well, you have more conviction in this game than I do. This is another situation, kind of like the last one, where you're betting a couple units. I'm not betting this game. A week ago, I would have said the Rams for sure because of what you said, where the Rams dominate Arizona. Like Kyler Murray has never beaten the Rams, and they've had his number. Although you could argue that he's only played one game against them in which he's not been a rookie. So, maybe he'll improve in that regard. Teams flip. Like I remember Donovan McNabb early in his career, he was always dominated by the Giants. Like the Giants had beaten him, I think, his first 6 starts against them. And then suddenly he started crushing the Giants. So I think that Murray with another year with DeAndre Hopkins, if he's healthy, we just had that question. He wasn't healthy last week, but he's definitely going to be better this week. Murray could improve. The defense has definitely gotten a lot better. Then again, the Rams didn't have they had Jared Goff in those previous matchups and not Matthew Stafford. But I am on Arizona here, not just because the Sharps are doing it, but because I think the Rams might be distracted. They just had a huge win over the Buccaneers, and their next game is on Thursday night against Seattle. So they have to prepare for that. I think that might be the reason why the Sharps are betting Arizona, just because of that, the motivational angle being in Arizona's favor. This is a revenge game for Arizona. They got knocked out of the playoffs last year because the Rams beat them. So I think you can make that case for the Cardinals. The problem, like I said, and you said, the Rams have dominated the series, and I don't know if Murray's quite there yet. Plus Hopkins, we don't know if he's 100%. If you were to tell me Hopkins is definitely going to be 100%, I might even consider betting the Cardinals for a unit or so. But we don't know that yet, so I'm just not gonna place a wager on that until we know.
Yeah, and I had missed that. I'm very bad at checking the schedule. Like I do half the games and then the other half slip through my mind somehow. So knowing that the Rams have a Thursday night game coming up does give me a little pause. It'll probably drop my unit count a little bit, and it makes sense as to why this line has come down now. Because before I would have told you that that line of -6 on the Rams, I wouldn't love it, but I could see it. But now it coming down to -4.5 makes a lot of sense to me because they could be looking ahead a bit. But for me, it's just I think that they just have the advantage in that one key area. They have 4 quality receiving weapons. I know Deshaun Jackson's the epitome of inconsistent, but he has the speed that needs to stretch the defense and open things up for other people. So I think between that weakness and just the fact that Sean McVay and his coaching staff have found a way to dominate Arizona in the past, makes me want to stick with the Rams here for sure. I'm interested to see what happens in this game though, because the winner of this is going to have the leg up in the NFC West, and that's going to be a dogfight all year long.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun division to watch. And it's a round robin this week because the Seahawks are playing the 49ers. The 49ers open -3. It's still -3, although the VIG is kind of dropping in for San Francisco. So this line could fall to -2.5 soon. So you talked about how these teams have dominated. The Rams have dominated the Cardinals. The Seahawks have dominated the 49ers. They've won 13 out of the last 15 meetings. So will it be 14 out of 16?
I don't think so. I think that I said this spread is fair. I'm not super into it, but I'm on the 49ers side here. I know they're hurting at cornerback, which could prove to be a massive issue because Seattle has a couple of really, really great receiving weapons. But if you look at that Seattle defense, they have just been awful this year. And I know I was giving you flack earlier in the year. I'm like, their pass rush is better than they look. Well, now they're without Kerry Hyder, and they're not in good shape. And their run defense is absolutely atrocious. I think that they've allowed the third most rushing yards in the NFL, 155 yards per game. And when San Francisco's offense is operating at what I would call peak efficiency, they're running the ball a lot. I believe that they run I think the sixth most of any team in the NFL this year so far, and that's with a skeleton core at running back. Like, they lost Raheem Mostert right away. They didn't have Elijah Mitchell last week, and yet they've still been pounding the rock with guys like Trey Sermon, and even Kyle Juszczyk last week was operating as the second string running back, which I don't want to see that happen again necessarily. I love Kyle Juszczyk, but I would like, Mitchell to come back and be more explosive. So if Mitchell plays, I'm going to like the 49ers a little bit because I think they'll be able to control the clock and kind of just, go along with the Seahawks, kind of take their defense out and wear them down. And then on the defensive side of the ball, do I trust them necessarily to contain Lockett and Metcalf? No, I don't. I really don't. But do I think that they have a chance to get some pressure on Russell Wilson and maybe just force one stop and get a 3-point win? I think so. So I'm on San Francisco here. It's a no unit bet right here. This is, as Michael said, this is almost a must win for Seattle here. So I have a little bit of concern as to how motivated they might be. But then again, with them playing on Thursday night, that makes me lean a little bit more in the 49ers favor because they're not coming out, or they don't have a distraction coming up that soon. But I could see a case for the Seahawks here at +3.
Yeah, I love the Seahawks. I don't think the Thursday night factor really matters that much in this instance. Like it does for the Rams because they're coming off a win and they're a big favorite. For the Seahawks, they're underdogs and they're coming off a loss. In fact, they're coming off 2 losses. So Russell Wilson has a great record after a defeat. He's 25-13 against the spread, not including his rookie year. And now he's coming off 2 losses in a row. And I think that, it's kind of going to be like, he's going to be really locked in against a 49er team missing like so many cornerbacks. So we'll see if K'Wan Williams can play. It sounds like Josh Norman's going to be out. They're already missing Jason Verrett. So this is a really banged up San Francisco secondary that I think that Russell Wilson could really exploit. And we'll see about the offensive line. It was an issue last week. Brandon Shell being out was huge in addition to Ethan Pochik, their center. So if one of those returns, I think they can hold up kind of well against the 49ers. And, kind of sounds weird because the 49ers have a great pass rush, but the San Francisco historically has struggled against mobile quarterbacks. We saw it we kind of saw it against the Seahawks in the past, and that's why they've only won 2 games out of 15 against the Seahawks. So I just think that Seattle matches up very well against the Niners, even though their defense is kind of struggling. Like their secondary is bad. Kirk Cousins just had a huge game against them, but I don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo to have the same sort of game. I know the Niners have some good weapons in Samuel and Kittle and Ayuk, who's coming along. But I don't trust Garoppolo, especially as a favorite here. So I love Seattle. I love getting Russell Wilson as an underdog and off 2 losses in a row. So Seattle might be in one of my super contest picks.
Yeah, so now I'm very, very confused as to what I want to do about it, because I'm looking at both arguments on both sides, and I see perfectly why both of them are right, which is a problem. So I'm having like a lot of trouble picking this. Like, it's very much like I was going with the 49ers because I think that they have the advantage over the Seattle defense, but at the same time, I don't want to trust their cornerback room. And then the other way, do I really want to trust the Seahawks after they got shut down by the Vikings defense when Tyler Lockett came out of the game? I'm torn. I'm going to have to announce my official pick on this one later this week on Twitter. For now, I am like 1,000th of 1% more confident in the 49ers, I guess. But stay tuned. I will tweet my official selection probably Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, this is a tough game for me to pick, but I see your case for the Seahawks.
Sounds good. And you're at Jacob Kamiker, so definitely look out for that. You tweet your picks before the game, so yeah, I'm curious to see what you end up going with. Curious about your opinion on this game too. The Ravens at the Broncos, because this is one of my favorite games this week. Sign open up pick 'em, and it's still a pick 'em. So who do you like here?
This is another one I'm torn on. There are a lot of these this week that I feel like were priced, or I could understand both sides of them, or were priced in a way that could make me think about it. I was actually somewhat surprised that the Broncos opened. They were a favorite when I was looking at it, but now it's down to a pick 'em. The Ravens, they haven't lived up to expectations thus far, despite being 2-1. They barely beat the Lions last week, and they beat the Chiefs by a single point. They lost to the Raiders, so I'm not sure they're as good as their record says they are. I'm also not entirely convinced that the Broncos are. They're 3-0, but they've beaten three bad teams. At the same time, they've beaten all three of those bad teams handily, and they have a really good roster as a whole. But if you look at this team, though, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. They've got Bradley Chubb and Josie Jewell out. I think Ronald Darby's missing time. KJ Hamler was lost last week, and two offensive linemen exited the game for the Broncos. Dalton Reisner and Graham Glasgow. So I'm going to want to see if they're healthy before making an official determination on this pick. Baltimore was banged up on defense last week, but they got Jimmy Smith back, and they should get their defenders back from the COVID list. So that gives me a little bit more confidence that they'll be able to slow down the Denver offense, especially if they're without two offensive linemen. I don't know if Reisner and Glasgow are going to play. If they do play, then this game I could see going either way. For now, I have it listed as the Ravens because I'm worried about the Denver offensive line. But at the same time, the Ravens have been overrated this year, so I'm not betting on the Ravens right now. But I'm interested to hear your pick and if you could sway me to the Broncos side.
Yeah, the Ravens could be 0-3 right now. If Edwards-Helaire didn't fumble at the end, they would have lost to the Chiefs, assuming the Chiefs would have hit that field goal. And then against Detroit, they needed a 66-yard field goal to beat the Lions. I know Marquise Brown had those drops and they weren't focused. So maybe you could say if they had lost to the Chiefs, they would have beaten the Lions. But either way, like they probably should be 1-2 or so right now. Instead, they're 2-1. And you can also say they almost beat the Raiders on Monday night. But they have injuries as well in their offensive line. Ronnie Stanley's been out, and that's been huge. They haven't been blocking as well. And I think Stanley is another key injury to watch too. Like Denver's offensive line is key for this game. If one of those guys plays, I absolutely love Denver in this game. I first of all, I think the spread's way off. It's a pick 'em. I made it -3.5. I like that. I think Denver is a better team than Baltimore. I think they have a better defense. I think they have a better offensive line. And I think, receiving core probably about even. And then quarterback, obviously Baltimore's is better, but Denver has a great defense that could stop Lamar Jackson. And then on the other side, you have Teddy Bridgewater versus Baltimore's defense, which sounds bad, if Baltimore's defense is healthy. But then you kind of look at Teddy Bridgewater's record against blitz heavy teams. Teddy Bridgewater heading into week 3. I don't have his numbers for week 3, but he played against the Jets, so obviously they were good. In the first 2 weeks of the season against the blitz, Teddy Bridgewater is 17 of 17, 171 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's insane. And no other team blitzes more than Baltimore. So I think Bridgewater has a great matchup here. I also think this is a big statement game for Denver. They're 3-0, but no one really believes in them. because they play bad teams, but they've slaughtered all 3 teams. Like none of those games are close. So I think people are underrating them. This is their first matchup against, kind of like a quote unquote good team. So I think they're going to try to make a statement. And, like I said, I think the spread is too low and the public is all over Baltimore. Like 80% of the money is on Baltimore. So they're kind of like a public dog, even though they're not technically an underdog. So this is another reason why I love Denver. So as long as Denver has 4 of its 5 offensive linemen, I'm going to be all over them. It's going to be one of my top picks this week.
All right, you've convinced me with your blitz stats from Teddy Bridgewater because I'm already on the Teddy Bridgewater covers against the spread like 80% of the time bandwagon, which is just absurd. No other quarterback comes close to doing that. So yeah, I was very much a coin flip on this one. The only concern I have for Denver is the amount of injuries. But if their offensive line ends up being healthy, I'll be on Denver with you. I think my original sentiment as to why I thought Denver or was surprised to see Denver as a favorite was I just assumed that Baltimore would be the favorite because the public perception is that they're better. But I think I agree with you. I think the Broncos roster is better. And Teddy Bridgewater's having a great year. I'm very excited that he's doing well. He's one of those guys that after his injury, it's just so hard not to root for him. So yeah, I'd rather be on Denver's side here. I was making the Baltimore argument, but I didn't even really believe it myself. So yeah, let's go with the Broncos here.
Nice. If you think about it this way, this is kind of like a weird thing. But like 80% of the money is on Baltimore. And I think you're right. Like if people are kind of surprised by the spread, if Baltimore is -3, I still think they would be getting a majority of the bets in this game. Like maybe not 80%, but maybe like 65%, 60 to 65%. So it kind of tells you what the sports books are thinking. Like I think they want people to bet Baltimore. So that kind of makes me really like Denver a lot. Like I said, they need 4 out of 5 offensive linemen for me to make this a big pick. But even if they're both out, like, and Baltimore's missing Ronnie Stanley too, like I would still be on with Denver.
Yeah, and Denver has some decent depth. They have Natane Moody and Quinn Miners, who both are solid prospects. So if they're good, I will be okay with them. It's just the depth you worry about after that.
Yeah. Michael's saying Denver pick and Chiefs -7.5 parlay. You could do that, I guess. I would prefer to bet them individually. I don't really like parlays, but I mean, yeah, if you're going to parlay, I think that's how you go. All right, last of the late afternoon games. The Steelers are at the Packers. This line open up. Packers -7. It's still -7. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Packers. The Steelers are a mess right now. Ben Roethlisberger can't really do much on offense. He's averaging 3.2 air yards per attempt right now. It's good for bottom 5 among quarterbacks. He's just not throwing the ball downfield at all. He's not even really looking downfield because I don't think he's confident that he can get there. We talked about this last year, that his arm strength was starting to dwindle, and now he's dealing with a pec injury, and I just don't think he trusts his arm anymore. Then you look at the other problems that the offense has. They decided to draft a running back to fix their running game. They've now realized that wasn't really the problem. It's the offensive line, the blocking in front of the back. Najee Harris has been great in the receiving game. He's done a lot of catching checkdowns from Ben Roethlisberger and turning them into yards, but they don't have a run game because they can't block for him. And then the receiving core, Deontay Johnson, we don't know if he's going to be healthy. Juju Smith-Schuster left last game with a rib injury. He's day to day, so he might play, but is he going to be 100%? Rib injuries can linger a bit, so there's concerns there. So that offense is just, everything about it is a mess right now. I'm not willing to trust Ben Roethlisberger. And then defensively, they've been basically missing half their starters, the Steelers. Maybe TJ Watt returns and can get some pressure on the Packers, especially if Elton Jenkins, this happens every time I try to say his name, Elton Jenkins, if he has to miss time, then that might not bode well for the Packers, because TJ Watt will be able to get pressure, but we don't know if Watt's going to be healthy. And even if he is, there are other pieces missing on that defense. So I like the Packers here. The Packers looked pretty good Sunday night against the 49ers on offense. Their defense looked really, really good early in the game. I hate to say this, but Kevin King was out with an illness during the game, and the Packers were better off without him, and they were playing Eric Stokes back there. Kevin King has been burned mercilessly this year. So I don't think there's a reason to fade Green Bay unless the Steelers get miraculously healthy. I just don't know if they're going to be able to score enough to keep pace with the Packers, or more aptly, I don't think that they're going to be able to limit the Packers to few enough points to cover a 7-point spread.
Yeah, so I hate to be wishy-washy here. Like, I just don't know where I'm going to go with this game yet. Like, I'm leaning on the Steelers, but it could really go either way just because there's so many injury question marks in this game. Like you mentioned, TJ Watt, his presence is huge. Like the Steeler defense has not been the same without him. They even week 2, the Raiders are doing nothing until TJ Watt left, and then suddenly the Raiders couldn't be stopped. So like his absence would be enormous against Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, like not being able to pressure Rodgers, like Green Bay would kill the Steelers if Watt's out. But if Watt's in, then you have to look at like if the Packers are going to have Sir Elton Jenkins at left tackle again. Like not having Jenkins plus Bakhtiari could be problematic, if Watt's playing. And then you have to wonder if the Steeler receivers are going to play. Like Deontay Johnson, that's enormous. Juju Smith-Schuster, another one. If I feel like they only really need him if Johnson's out. If it's Johnson and Claypool, they can get away with that. But if Johnson's out and they don't have Smith-Schuster, suddenly it's only Claypool, and the Packers can eliminate him with Jair Alexander. So there are just so many like injury question marks. I just don't really know where I'm going yet. But I do get the feeling this line's kind of high a little bit. The advanced spread on this game was 6.5. Now it's at 7. Like not a big deal. But I made this line personally -6. I'm just not a big believer in the Packers. Like they got blown out week 1. Week 2, they were down at halftime against Detroit. I know they rallied and covered, but still, like they didn't look too good in the first half against Detroit. And then last week, the Niners lost both the 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks in that game, and so I think that result is kind of maybe a little skewed rather than what it should be. So I think this line's a little too high, so I'm going to be on Pittsburgh, but the injuries could really change my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm not super high on Green Bay either as a whole. I'm just so unbelievably low on Pittsburgh. Like I have been most of the year. Then they got that week 1 win and it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit, but now they're kind of turning into what I thought they'd be. And I don't think that they're very good. Like they'll have a good defense when everyone's healthy. But their offense, even when all the receivers are healthy, it's just such a problem because Ben Roethlisberger can only do so much at this point in his career. I can understand why he'd be on the Steelers at +7 here, and I don't think I put down a ton of units here. I have 1 written down for the Packers. So if the injury situation changes and all the Steelers are suddenly healthy, I may switch to your side. But I'm anticipating they'll be at least out without some people for this game.
Yeah, their offense is so dreadful to watch. It's like dump off, like, and then just punt a 4th and 5. It's just like it's so bad. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame anyone for taking the Packers -7. But like I said, if Watt is back and the Packers are missing 2 offensive linemen, I would suddenly have interest in the Steelers. But frankly, like not a lot of interest, just because like I just can't bet on the Ben Roethlisberger right now. All right, let's move on to the big game. Can't wait to hear your opinion on this. The Buccaneers are at the Patriots. Line open up Buccaneers -6.5. Line moved to 7. There is an ungodly amount of betting action on the Buccaneers. It's like almost 98%. I haven't seen anything like it. And this is going to be one of the highest bet games of the year, I think. Like probably, until the Super Bowl or at least the NFC AFC championships. Like this will probably get the most tickets. So can't wait to see this one, and I can't wait to hear your opinion. So who do you like here?
Yeah, so this is for an undetermined amount of units right now. I have the Buccaneers penciled in. I'm very worried about just the matchup in general because the way the Patriots are built as a team is they need their defense to do a lot of work to slow down, if not shut down, the opposing offense. And then their own offense is supposed to be run heavy with Mac Jones making a certain number of plays to keep them in the game. But if you look at Tampa Bay's defense, they are one of the best run defenses in the NFL. They ranked 4th this year. The last 2 years, they've been the best run defense in the NFL. So I have concerns about whether or not they're going to be able to run with Damian Harris enough to take the pressure off of Mac Jones, especially James White suffered a hip subluxation last week, which is not fun, I can imagine. And so they're very thin at running back because you're talking Ramondre Stevenson and J.J. Taylor, who they have left behind Harris. So I'm not super excited about that. I do think Mac Jones can make some throws against this Tampa Bay secondary, though. They're very thin at cornerback. They've been talking to Richard Sherman this week about a potential signing there. So that goes to show that the Buccaneers aren't exactly confident in their cornerback room right now because of all the injuries. So I think that New England could cover here if they could throw the ball well enough. It's just a matter of, do you trust Mac Jones to go blow for blow with Tom Brady? It's a horrifying question to ask because you're like, of course not, off the top of your head. But if you break down last week's game against the Saints, Mac Jones threw the ball better than it looked, at least. Like, there were 2 interceptions. They weren't really his fault. Johnny Smith dropped the ball directly into the hands of a Tampa Bay, or rather a New Orleans defender. It was horrible, just a horrible play. And I know Jones had his worst game of the year last week, so like I'm not saying like he's a terrific quarterback right now, but in his first 2 games, he did make some really nice throws and had some nice anticipation throws. So I can see a case for New England. I just think if you render New England one-dimensional and take away the run game, put everything on Mac Jones, it is going to be very hard for him to not make at least one mistake during the game. So I'm going with Tampa Bay here. I'm not super confident in it, especially hearing that the public is hammering this game because it feels like their perception of New England is wrong. Like, New England's a bit underrated in my opinion because they could have easily beaten the Dolphins in week 1. And, you know, they lost to the Saints pretty badly, but they just made mistakes in that game. I think they make enough mistakes to lose this one, but I don't think it's going to be the absolute blowout a lot of people think it's going to be.
I don't think so either. I like the Patriots quite a bit, actually. Assuming that the Buccaneers are not going to have Jamel Dean, sound like a kind of a serious injury, which might keep him out this game. If he comes back, then my opinion might change. But right now, given that the Buccaneers might be without 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks, against the receiving core, that's not that bad. I think they're kind of underrated. Jacoby Myers is pretty good. Kendrick Bourne finally got going last week. I thought he looked pretty impressive. And then Nelson Aguilar, he can always catch a deep pass. So I think Mac Jones should do well against Tampa's defense, especially if Jason Pierre-Paul's out again. I thought Mac Jones actually played well last week. Like, I know he threw 3 interceptions. One occurred very late in the game, kind of desperation play. I think it was the last offensive play for the Patriots. And then the 2 other interceptions weren't his fault at all. They just bounced off the hands of the receivers. And I thought, like, before that, he was doing very well. Like, I remember there was like a 3rd and 16, and he had like 15 air yards on one of those throws. And then there was a 3rd and 8, and he threw the ball through the air 10 yards. So it's not like he was dinking and dunking. Like, he was actually like throwing legitimate passes. Whereas like before, like maybe you could say in the preseason or week 1, he was kind of dinking and dunking, but like actually like week 1, he did pretty well. Week 2, I thought he dinked and dunked like a little bit more. But week 3, I thought he was more aggressive, and I thought he was doing a good job until his receivers gave the ball to the Saints. So I like this matchup a lot if Dean's out, because Tampa's secondary can't stop anyone right now. The Falcons were even moving the ball pretty well until Matt Ryan threw those 2 pick sixes as a result of pressure. But Jones is protected way, way better than Matt Ryan is. So I don't think that's going to happen unless Jonnu Smith decides to throw the game again or something. But yeah, it's like Tom Brady's obviously going to score points against the Patriots, even though Bill Belichick might throw something his way. We'll see. It's kind of, I don't know. I can't decide like if Bill Belichick's going to show Brady something he hasn't seen yet, because they've been together so long. Like, Brady was in those meeting rooms when Belichick was trying to figure out how to stop Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and Kurt Warner. Like what has Belichick come up with suddenly that he's going to throw to Tom Brady? But at the same time, like, Belichick's the best coach in NFL history, in my opinion. So, maybe he has something for Brady after all. Like, I can't decide yet, but at the same time, I know Mac Jones is going to have success against the Buccaneers because they can't, their pass defense is atrocious, especially with 2 of the top 3 corners out. They just can't stop anyone. So I think the spread's too high. I made this line -3.5. Actually, the computer model made it -5. The advanced spread in this game is -5.5. So this spread is way inflated. The public, like I said, is all over Tampa in what's going to be the highest bet regular season game of the year. So give me the Patriots.
So this is what I will say. If this line climbs above 7, if the public continues to pound Tampa Bay and they become -7.5, then I will definitely switch to the Patriots. because I do think that what you've said rings true. But if it sticks at 7, I might stay with the Bucks. I'm just worried. I like Mac Jones as much. I've talked about this on here a million times. I like Mac Jones a ton as a passer. I'm just worried about what happens if he's has to do everything himself if the running game can't get going. Maybe it turns out well, and that would be good because then I would look I would feel pretty good about myself if that happened. But I'm not sold that that's going to happen. I could see it happening, but I just have worries about this game. I'm probably not going to bet this in the end because I'm going to be so invested in watching this game in general. But I'm going to have to make a decision once I see where the line goes. But for now, I'm very tentatively on Tampa.
Another standalone game you're not betting this week.
This is this is a weird week for me, man. I can't explain it.
That's funny. I don't like. Ideally, you don't want a rookie quarterback. Like you don't want to lean on him with no running game. Obviously, the Patriots are not going to be able to run the ball in Tampa. So yeah, it doesn't sound appealing to have a rookie quarterback in that way. But remember, the Patriots are the best coached team in the NFL, so they're gonna put him in the best situations possible. And I assuming Jamel Dean is out, which sounds like he is. I just think it's just such Tampa secondary is just such a liability. And their pass rush. It hasn't been all that great this year. They couldn't put pressure on Dallas when Zach Martin was out. And then this past week, Matthew Stafford was barely touching the pocket. I know Pierre-Paul is out, but he could be out again. So I'm going to be on the Patriots. +7 sounds good to me. But yeah, I would love +7.5.
Let's hope we can get it so I can be on the Patriots with you.
All right, sounds good. So let's see if you're 3 for 3 and not betting standalone games this week. The Raiders are at the Chargers. This line opened up Chargers -3. It's up to 3.5. Who do you like here?
I like the Chargers here. I think the Raiders are a bit overrated. They've won a couple games in overtime and beat a Steelers team that isn't good, as I've discussed earlier. I think the Chargers are pretty legit. They just beat the Chiefs. I know that they got a little bit lucky in that one with the turnovers, but their offense is just very good. I think the Raiders' defense has definitely been better than I expected. Their free agent additions have been very good, but I don't know if they're going to be able to contain the Justin Herbert type offense where he can throw to anyone. He throws to these random dudes like Donald Parham and fullback Gabe Neighbors out of the backfield for touchdowns occasionally. So Herbert just makes really good throws. As Andrew just said, the receivers are balling. So I think that the Raiders are going to have trouble containing them. And I know the Chargers defense has some holes, and Derek Carr actually leads the NFL in passing yards with 1,203 passing yards at this point. But I think that the Chargers find a way to win at home. I don't love the -3.5. As I've said, I've been burned by it before. But I'm going to be on the Chargers for 1 unit, making it the 1 unit I'm betting on a standalone game at this point.
Very nice. I'm a little bit more confident. I have 2 units on the Chargers. I like their pass rush going against the Raider offensive line, which hasn't really been exposed yet. Week 1, Baltimore had the blitz a lot because they just don't really have a good edge rush without blitzing. Week 2, the Steelers lost TJ Watt in the second quarter, so the Raiders didn't have to worry about that. And then week 3, the Dolphins, the pass rush isn't like that great. So I think this is the first time they're really going to be tested. So I like that for the Chargers. There are a couple of major injury question marks in this game. Both top cornerbacks I think are going to be questionable. So kind of look out for that. That might impact how many units I'm going to go with this. But this line moved from 3 to 3.5. That was the Sharps doing that. The Sharps like the Chargers in this game. And I think they agree with you, and I do as well, that the Raiders are a little overrated. They could have, if TJ Watt doesn't get hurt, they could easily be 0-3 right now. That Ravens game in week 1, that was weird. And then week against the Dolphins could have won in overtime as well. And not to take a lot away from the Raiders. Like I think they're well coached, especially offensively with Greg Olsen. He's doing a phenomenal job. Like I don't know if he has aspirations to be a head coach, but someone should interview for him for being a head coach. Like he took Josh Freeman to a Pro Bowl, and now Derek Carr is leading the NFL in passing yards. Like that's insane to me. So I like the way the Raiders coach, but I think the Chargers just match up well against them with their pass rush. Plus, like the commenters were saying, like they're the receivers against the Raiders secondary outside of Hayward. I think that's a big advantage for the Chargers too. So I like the Chargers for a couple units, but the injuries to the cornerbacks might change that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we're on the same page here because we've disagreed more than usual, but they're all on games that I'm kind of like wishy-washy on, or like I can see both sides of, or I want to flip the other side. So, yeah, the Chargers, I feel like they have the advantage here for sure.
Yeah, it's always good to have disagreements here and there. I still can't believe we had that one week where we agreed on 15 games. So
Yeah.
it's cool to have disagreements. So let's get to the survivor picks. I'll show you yours, and then you can kind of decide, and then I'll talk about mine, and then you can pick yours. So you went Niners, Broncos, Cardinals, and then you have week 4 coming up. My picks were the Niners, the Browns, the Broncos, and this week I'm going with the Bills. So this week's interesting, where the Bills are the obvious play. Like you're not going to lose with them unless Josh Allen gets hurt or something weird happens. So the one thinking is you can take the sure win with the Bills, or you can gamble and take a team like the Bengals, where you may not be able to pick them later, and the Bengals should win Thursday night. My thinking is like, yeah, saving the Bills might do well, but like, what if Josh Allen gets hurt and then you can't pick the Bills anyway? So I think that you should just take the team. Like, don't save teams. I don't like saving teams unless it's super close, and it's not super close here. The Bills are 100% to win against the Texans, or I should say 99.9% chance to win against the Texans. Like Allen gets hurt or something weird happens. But yeah, I'm on the Bills. So who do you like?
The actual implied win probability of the Bills game is 92.3% based off of the money line. Don't ask why I know that off the top of my head. I just do. I will be on the Bills with you. It doesn't make sense to save them. You could hypothetically save them to use the Jets or to use them against the Jets later and take the Bengals here against the Jaguars. But I just don't have a good feeling about that Thursday night game. I'd rather just survive through week 4, and the Bills are not going to lose to the Texans, barring Davis Mills' ascension to Tom Brady level, which is not going to happen. So I've got Buffalo and a 14-point win to cover the spread there.
Okay. Yeah. So we agree on that at least. Rob says I'm having an off week, so he's with Jacob. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully one of us does well, because that means our joint super contest entry will do well as too. Before we go, I wanted to hear your opinion on this. The next Sunday night game is Bills at Chiefs. I found this to be interesting. What do you think the advanced spread on this game is?
The advanced spread on that. The Chiefs are the home team, right?
Bills at Chiefs. Yeah.
Okay. I would think, given the Chiefs' struggles lately, they might put it at -2.5 for the Chiefs. Like, just give a little bit of an advantage to Buffalo.
I thought that too. It's -3.5, so it's kind of on the other side of the field goal, which is interesting. Like I saw some power rankings this week where the Chiefs are way low. Like I think I forget who had it, but the Chiefs were like 12th, and I thought that's like way too much of an overreaction. Like the Chiefs could easily be 3-0 right now if they didn't have sloppy turnovers, and I think they're going to bounce back. So I kind of wonder if the Chiefs -3.5 is a good bet ahead of time, because if the Chiefs slaughter the Eagles. And the Bills kind of look, average against the Texans. Like they win by 10 or something. I think the Chiefs line could rise to like 4.5 or 5 or something. Not that it's like a big advantage, but I think that spread could rise, because I'd be shocked if the Chiefs lose.
Yeah, I like the 3.5. I would bet it now, just to make sure that, what if the Chiefs win by like 40 over the Eagles and it balloons up to 6 or something like that. So I don't think it would get that high, but you never know. Something crazy could happen for the Bills. So -3.5, I would like for sure.
Okay, sounds good. So that is it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Kamenker. I will post my favorite picks of the week on Twitter Sunday, maybe Saturday night. I have a wedding on Sunday, so I'm not going to see any of the NFL action this week. So keep me posted on how badly I'm doing is what I'll ask of you there. But yeah, over at Sporting News, I've got my best bets of the week coming out. We'll be tracking the odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook as well. And we've got a ton of Tom Brady content coming up, so keep an eye out for that. I will have my nose to the grindstone for the next 3 days. Completely completely getting every angle you can imagine on Tom Brady and Bill Belichick out there. So yeah, follow me on Twitter at Jacob Kaminger, and you'll see all that stuff and some of my game breakdown stuff. Though that will be on hold for a week until I can actually watch games.
Sounds good. Have fun at the wedding. I will say that being at a wedding and having a bad Sunday is like the most tilting thing in the world because you can't watch anything. Like my sister got married during the 2015 season, and it was one of the weeks, and it was my worst week of the year. Like I was getting like no picks correct, and like I was just watching the scores on the phone. I'm like, what is happening? Like I was so angry the whole time. So if you want to have fun, just don't look at the scores and just wait till after. That's my suggestion. Once again, hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. I'm at walterfootball.com. We have tons of content about the draft. Charlie's posting some great content there. My mock draft is going to be updated tomorrow morning. My picks will be updated throughout the week. Thursday notes, Saturday notes, Sunday final thoughts. And plus the Monday game final thoughts there. Going to have injury updates, updated fantasy rankings, stardom, situm. So tons of content at walterfootball.com. So check us out there. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.
Bye.